80% of the gay community says they grew up in church. 80% of the gay community today says, I grew up in church. What does that mean for you and me then? It means a whole bunch of things, but here's a couple of them. It means it's no longer funny when from the pulpit somebody says things like, oh, but by the grace of God, I could commit any sin except that one. It's not funny. It's not funny because there's people, 80% of the gay community grew up in a church. And immediately they're meant to feel like what they are wrestling with is worse than what anybody else is wrestling with. And it's funny because Romans 1 is an interesting passage. Romans 1, and I've studied it a lot. Romans 1, most pastors will tell you, follows a pattern, kind of it goes downward from lesser sins to worse sins. And I have heard that forever and forever and forever. And it ends, Romans 1, guess where it ends? It ends talking about homosexuality. Here's the problem with that idea. Did you know when they wrote the Bible, there was no chapters? You knew that, right? Paul didn't write chapter 1, chapter 2. So he just kept writing. Guess what Paul talks about in chapter 2? He says, and those of you who judge others are also guilty. Now think about that. If this was just one continuous long thought, those who judge others are worse than those who are wrestling with homosexuality. The point I'm trying to make is this, is that for way too long, the church has stood on a side of saying, I could never deal with that. When the reality is that 80% of the gay community says, I was in that church. I was there and I was pushed out. I was no longer made to feel like if nobody else is wrestling with what I'm wrestling with, I need to find somewhere where someone can understand what I'm dealing with. And what I'm saying is, I want to be, and I hope you would want to be the kind of person that people who are wrestling with issues, they can talk to us. That we give enough space in our lives where people who deal with issues that are difficult can feel like they can come and they can have a conversation with us. Oh, but if I'm not careful, it'll look like I'm compromising my Christianity. Look like that to whom? Who are you trying to impress? Because Jesus came here, he left heaven, he became one of us. The Pharisees tried to point out to him how wrong he was, and he rejected it every single time. Because he came here to reach people. If you think that it would be hard for you to talk to somebody who's in a lifestyle of sin that you don't agree with, if that's hard for you, I want you to remember something, and I have to do this almost every day. I have to remember something. How hard was it for Jesus to talk to me? Because I'm pretty bad. How hard is it for Jesus to be my friend? And doesn't it make him look kind of bad? You know, I wonder if the angels are like, wow, Jesus, you're hanging out with Phil again. Ugh. Don't you know what that guy's like? And yet not one of you have ever thought that. Neither have I until I started thinking about this message. And I'll tell you why. Because when Jesus hangs out with me, he looks better. He looks better. He's willing to love somebody who's so unlovable like me. It makes him look better. It makes him look bigger. It makes him look greater. It makes his grace look stronger. It makes the truth of the gospel look that much more appealing because all have sinned and Jesus is willing to step down and talk to sinners like you and me. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. In this episode, I focused on the LGBTQ and kind of what I call the issue, but you're going to hear more about that in the episode. This episode is so foundational to what we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. And so I'm thankful that you took the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on our next episode.